This is the our webinar is actually collaboration between SURF Indonesia and the Non-Violent Peace Force of the Philippines and also PAKAR of Indonesia. So the idea, the themes of this meeting is the rise of Taliban and its impact to the women movement in jihadist circle in Southeast Asia. Why we come up with this idea? Because in Indonesia, especially in Indonesia, because I'm from Indonesia, so we observing what is Indonesia that how to say when the Taliban
Mbak Dete, maaf, ke-mute, Mbak.
Mute ya, Allah. Okay, hello, good morning everyone. I already talked very long, yeah, but I think but my still mute. Oh, okay, let me repeat again what I have been saying. Yeah? So thank you everyone. Thank you to joining our programs, and I'm really appreciate that you already spared your time for joining us. So I would like to introduce myself first. My name is Detalia from SURF Indonesia, an organization in Indonesia, civil society organization that focus on So I muted by the host. Okay, so and then this program is actually collaborations between SURF Indonesia, Non-Violent Peace Force of the Philippines, and also with PAKAR Indonesia. So the themes of our webinar today is actually about the rise of Taliban and its impact to the women's movement in the jihadist circles in Southeast Asia. Why this? Why this theme become important to discuss? Because the Afghanistan issue is still hot. And then we see that, I think we saw now, everybody observed the progress in Afghanistan, and then where the government is, the legitimate government was toppling down by the Taliban. And then the rise of the Taliban was responded by glorifications, especially in Indonesia, because Indonesians we have Jamaah Islamiyah group, which is affiliated to Al-Qaeda, and Al-Qaeda very having a close link with Taliban. So the winning of Taliban achieved that this is a kind like the winning of, the group that fighting for the upholding of Islamic rules. That is what they perceive in Indonesia. That's why they are very happy. They are really supporting, and then they are actually. What surprising me is not only organization which is having a tight link with the Al-Qaeda, but also the opponent like Hizbut Tahrir, which is different ideology with Jamaah Islamiyah and Taliban, and also another organization, party, PKS, which is supporting the establishment of Khilafah. They are also supporting the Taliban, so they have the same. They are also they also glorify this. The Taliban's winning as if that this is a kind of the promises of God is already fulfilled. So this is happening in Indonesia, and what we are afraid is there is violence acts followed by these glorifications, or if there is no violence acts, so far there is no violence acts, but we are afraid there is something is actually moving underground. So that's why we raise this issue up. And then especially with women, because what I read in the social media, the comment is not only the glorifications or positive comment or supporting comment, it's not only come from men, but it's also come from women. And surprisingly, it's not only come from Indonesia, although the video is the speaker, the ulama speaking is from Indonesia, but the support also come from Malaysia. So actually, this this glorification is already resonated across the border, across Indonesian border. So it's not only in Indonesia, but also responded by the Malaysia. So that's why we raise this issue, because we want to see what is the response from other country in Southeast Asia region, for example, like Singapore and the Philippines, what are the response? Because the video is in Indonesia, maybe the Filipino cannot understand. And then in Singapore, we cannot distinguish because Singapore and Malaysia, they use the Malay language. So maybe there is Singaporean also, but because as long as they didn't distinguish that they are Singaporean, it's very difficult for us to identify whether this is Malaysia or Singaporean. So that's why we raise this issue, because we want to know what is actually happening in the regions, and then so we can share. That's why we invited speakers from different, from Malaysia, Indonesia, the Philippines, and also Singapore, to share with us what is actually happening in their country in regard to the rise of Taliban and the winning of Taliban in Afghanistan. And this webinar is actually not only to share the informations, but from the sharing from our speakers, maybe we can already, how to say, identify what is happening in Singapore, what is happening in Malaysia, in Philippines, and Indonesia. And then we can identify that, and then we can discuss what we should do toward this. So we want to have a kind like, there is something that come up after the webinar. It's not only sharing the information, but we want to kind like build a common platform, common agenda, or common joint actions that what we should do regarding to this issue. So this is the background of the webinar, why we come up with this theme. And then as this is collaborations between SERV and Nonviolent Peaceforce and also PAKAR. So there is our colleague here, Memen, because the director, I think, Ronnie Delcy is not here. So I think there is a Memen also from Nonviolent Peaceforce. So maybe Memen, you can give a kind like opening to our webinar as a representative of Nonviolent Peaceforce. Sorry, I'm a bit slip my tongue. So Memen, can you do a kind like 5 minutes opening for this
Hello.
webinar?
Thank you, Dete. Terima kasih banyak. Assalamualaikum. Good afternoon. I'm sorry I cannot show my video right now because I'm also multitasking. But I would just like to express my gratitude to SERV for partnering with Nonviolent Peaceforce in organizing this very timely webinar. So I would like to welcome each and every one of you, and I would like to thank each and every one of you for giving us your time to take part in this very important discussion, because it affects all of us somehow in the region, especially us women here in Mindanao, and as Deti was explaining about how it's also being, how it's also affecting in Indonesia and even our women. So as one of our flagship program in Nonviolent Peaceforce, which is on women, peace and security, we would like to engage in discourse, in discussions, in topics such as this, because it has impact for us women, especially those affected by armed conflicts, affected by radicalism and violent extremism. So I would like to welcome all of you and thank you very much once again to SERV and to all our other collaborators and partners in this activity. I hope and I look forward to a very fruitful discussion this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Memen, for your very wonderful speech. So because we have only 2 hours and we have 5 speakers, so I will start with the programs. Yeah? So, but before we giving the floor to the participant, I would like to introduce our very fabulous speakers. We have 4 women and 1 man. Sorry, yeah, Pak Nasir Abbas, you are alone, but you are the king of oil, yeah, because you are alone. You are surrounded by beautiful and very powerful women.
Yes, so, thank you very much.
Yeah, so we have here Bapak Nasir Abbas. He is the expert on terrorism issue. He was a member of Jamaah Islamiyah before, but he already now a senior consultant of an organization in Indonesia concerned on terrorism issue, DSPAR. I don't know the I cannot remember the
DSPR.
DSAPR. Yeah. So this is the organization, and how to say, I call it Pa is minister. Yeah. NASIR ABBAS really has a lot, having a long experience with terrorism issues. So, and he is actually observing what is happening on the ground. So that's why he is very, how to say, competent speakers on this issue. And then we have also our colleague from the Philippines, WAHİDAH Alexandria Abdullah, or I used to call her Alex. She is executive director of Digilan Mindanao Women in Corporations. And she was involved with the, how to say, projects with titled Women Against Finance Extremism, which is supported by the Stabilization Network of Dubai, I think. And then she graduated from Zamboanga, University of Zamboanga, in major on Science of Commerce. So she is active, yeah, in Marawi. When Marawi has how to say, there is a Marawi seat, she's also involved on the ground. So another speaker is our beautiful lady from Malaysia, Mrs. HAFIZA Nur Ahmad. She is a lecturer of South Asia Politics in University of Sabah, University Malaysia of Sabah in Sabah. She's teaching on South Asia politics, including Afghanistan. So she's really, how to say, a good speaker. I mean, she's knowledgeable on Afghanistan. And another from Singapore, we have a beautiful young lady, Dr. JOLENE JERARD. She's an executive director of Centinel in Singapore. This is a kind of like security company, and maybe later JOLENE can explain, kind of like security company. And then she graduated her bachelor degree from National University of Singapore, and master's degree on security studies in Rajaratnam School of International Studies in Nanyang Technological University, and her doctoral degree from University of Andrews in United Kingdom. She's also a young senior fellow at the Rajaratnam School of International Studies, Nanyang Technological University of Singapore. And then the last one, we have our colleague from Indonesia, Ibu Diana Paramita. She is actually ex-UN staff in Afghanistan. She is already working in Afghanistan for quite some time, so she is very knowledgeable about the country. And since we're discussing about Afghanistan, so I invited her so she can give us a kind of like overall picture. What is happening in Afghanistan? What is the situation in Afghanistan? What is the woman situation in Afghanistan? What I heard yesterday when we have a program in Indonesia, that there is women Taliban. So there is, Taliban has women's wing, yeah, according the professor, the university, the rector of the university, Islamic University in Indonesia, that she met the Taliban's women. So we are really surprised. Oh, Taliban, there is women. So this is maybe Ibu Paramita can share with us the information in Afghanistan and what is actually the situation, and also how is this echoing to Indonesia, and what is actually our concern, because I and her, we are sitting together with other women's group. We are trying to identify, okay, what is the problems, what is the response of the radicals group, and also the common people. It's not only the response, the glorification is not only from the radicals group, but also from the common people. So what is actually the threat that might poses to Indonesia? So we are discussing about this, and that's why Ibu Paramita is also here to be with us. Yeah. So this is all our 5 how to say powerful speakers. So we would like to invite first Ibu Paramita to stay with us because you can elaborate first the situation in Afghanistan. How is the woman situation? What is the current situation in Afghanistan? Whether the Taliban is really actually fighting for how to say, for the upholding Islamic Sharia, or this is only seeking for power. So without further ado, I give it the floors to you, Ibu Mita, please. Hello, Ibu Mita.
Oh, yes. Hello. Sorry. I'm trying to navigate the PowerPoint. So a little bit, okay, 1 second. Let me see, share. Is that making any sense? Can everybody see this or? Yeah, is it clear enough?
Yes,
Yes. Before I begin, let me minute myself because I have a tendency to chin wag forever. My name is Diana Paramita. I am Indonesian Javanese from Jogja mixed with East Javanese. So I've been working in Afghanistan back and forth about 5 missions since 2004. And my last station or duty station was in Kabul. I completed my work under the United Nations staff with UNAMA and last March, and after 2 years, and it was a great opportunity to just sit and watch the landscape and the dynamics of the political, the elites in Afghanistan during the 2019 election. So, but in between then, I was in Afghanistan in 2005, 8, 9, and then I came back after. My interest in, I have this love for Afghanistan. I cannot say I have any sense of dislikeness. It's about the people, it's about the community, it's about the women that I come and meet, about the men, the youth, the spirit of building. And so my knowledge of Afghanistan is more ethnographic, being there with my friends, you know, the day-to-day. And even up to now, I'm following their development, the very dire situation, and along with my other friends, we sort of relay messages to make sure that our Afghan friends outside, in Afghanistan, my friends from outside, from different countries, are helping them to get out of the country or to seek some kind of security, some kind of sense of safety. So let me begin. So the real war of Afghanistan, this is a very big title. And but talking about Afghanistan, the real war, it's a never-ending chronicle of sadness and deaths, you know. But with Taliban fighting for, what is the primary or the aim of Taliban, and whether it's to primarily solely to establish an Islamic Sharia, or does it seek to seek power as the end of its as an end itself? So there are different reference to what the Taliban is, but let's begin with the what the Taliban means. I'm sure a lot of you are aware Taliban in Pashto means student, and it's it sort of shaped or established around 1990s, just right after the Russian invasion. And some of the Talibans were, majority were Pashtuns, which is also the majority of ethnic in Afghanistan. So just for those who are not very familiar with Afghanistan, if Indonesia has hundreds of ethnics or hundreds of sub-ethnics, in Afghanistan there are, the Pashtuns would be the majority, and then you have the Uzbekis, the Tajiks, the Hazaras, and other little, including the Kuchis, which is a mix. It has its own origin, but the Pashtuns are the majority of the Taliban, and there's a lot of misunderstanding or misperception that all Pashtuns are Taliban. They're not. Apparently the Taliban also have a different, in the north you have the Tajiks, the Uzbeks, even in Bamiyan around the central highland, you'll have a a Hazara Taliban, but they have a different characters depending on their relations. It's in their own community. So this is very ethnic based. Now, how did it started? Well, it started with the Saudi, and in my other reading, the UAE had interest in funding them until 9/11, when they started letting go of the Taliban. And their aim is to definitely restore peace and security in their own context of what, in the framework of the Sharia. So this is the questions that have been asked to the Taliban in the recent victory or capture of Afghanistan in general, and lastly with the Kabul being defeated or captured. The question was, can you define what Sharia law you are referring to? So this is a big question, and hopefully the other colleagues or speakers will be able to elaborate what is the basic or the standard of Sharia law and the probability, if that would be a good discussion, or if anyone is interested. And now Taliban is ethnic based, and this is why I believe that it's not like the IS or the ISIS or the Al-Qaeda, which is sort of a global group, that radical group that moves internationally. Taliban is very ethnic, and it Thomas Johnson in his book, The Taliban Narratives, quoted David Cullen as that this is how they operate, but they operate based on the communication language that they're using, and that's why I am not sure that it will apply to different countries, and because you need to understand the culture to be able to join or the Taliban. It's not that easy. And if there's any intentions of any groups from Southeast Asia to individuals to join them, they really need to understand the culture. So they base their movement on the information operation. So they have a chain, a way of communicating. And this is what Johnson was saying, that the Western, the coalition, did not really think further, that they thought this is just a, just communication, but they do not have a deep understanding that it is very effective in the way the Taliban works. And so with technology and communication, social media, text messages and all, that's how they do the threats. Calls, text message, or through the, within their own community, it's they call it the night letters, is one of them. So what is really the situation in Afghanistan? I'm sure if you follow Al Jazeera, CNN, other major news agencies, it is really, really seriously bad. You cannot move around the city. Banks are closed. Passport offices are closed. I just have one of my Afghan friend going out, and the rest of the family is in the house. So the changes of Afghanistan, or no, Kabul, the biggest one, the very it's the Jakarta, of Afghanistan. I would be able to, before, in March, I was able to drive around, even though with all the security, with the institution I was working with, we had all the protocols, threats of bombs would be around or attacks, but people are still going out and about. They still go to stores, the weddings are still on, Eid was still on, everybody can go and party, meaning, going to families. even with COVID, life is just like any other day in Kabul. So now the report or information from my friends, most neighborhood streets, when kids and children used to run around, you have school, girls in their white hijab and black school outfit would be walking around the streets of Kabul. These scenes are not available anymore. You cannot see it anymore. Most places are closed. From time to time, there were sound of bombings, attacks, or the sound of automatic guns. So, and in the information I got from a friend who has network out in the remote areas, their staff are very, especially the women, are very, very scared. They are into the sort of paranoid, difficult in breathing, difficult in eating, difficult in sleeping. So it's like an ongoing nightmare. You're awake, you're asleep, and you are still in that nightmare. So that's a part of the reality from Kabul to Jalalabad to somewhere in Bamiyan even, so they are considered as threats to the public, the Talibans. And the way they structure their army or their fighters are not like the way the normal or the usual armies that has a structure of command. So as an example, a friend of mine were going to be evacuated from Jalalabad to, say, Kabul, or moved as we speak. Even the Afghans would not be able to just go and drive between provinces because they're checkpoints. Unfortunately, these checkpoints are the Taliban may not have link from checkpoint one to another to the chain of command up in the Kabul, for example. So in order to go through all the roads, checkpoints, they need to know whether they can be alive at the end of the checkpoint. So that was a challenge. What else? Now, there's been news as well, and please correct me if I'm wrong or anyone has more information on it, but there's a discord within the Taliban themselves, and the incident of the twin bombs in Abbey Gate at the Kabul airport was also because they didn't know how to secure a perimeter based on what's a standard international that's been in place for the last 20 years. And that's how they, the suicide bomb that was the IS Russian sort of claim to have done took place. So there's a bit of pressure on the Taliban of handling the situation, the security. I think Badetta also shared probably from our Afghan friend that there's other types of, I don't know if it's a case by case, but there's a killing on the road, on the street, in public. And that is very possible because a colleague of a colleague who works for an international organization, when the Taliban got found his ID card, he was pretty much beaten up by the end of we call it in Indonesian, popor, of the end of the AK-47, and then his thigh was jabbed by the bayonet of the AK-47. So it is threatening for not just women, but also men who are working for international organizations. Now, if Dete also mentioned that because Ibu Professor Amani was saying that she met the two representatives of Taliban women, which surprised me because I've never really, no one really has that I know of since since I was interested in Afghanistan, that they mentioned there's a right wing or a women Taliban. They are a part of the Taliban because, as an example, Al Jazeera had in 2014 had a show or a documentary of an Ashraf ul Madaris. It's a madrasa. It housed, or in 2014 there were 6,000 girls. So even then, the girls in Kunduz, which was where the madrasa was they can segregate themselves with the majority of the Afghan girls. The type of hijab or the burqa that they're using, or niqab, are totally different from the traditional burqa of the Afghans. So there's already been that movement, and an MP, Fawzia Kufi, mentioned that the funding could be from Pakistan and other Middle East country. So that was already about how many years ago? And if Kunduz has been a stronghold of the Taliban, even up to the 2019 elections, I'm not sure that there would be any significant change in how they, educate the girls. And we can talk about what education. Briefly, it's understanding or reading the Quran, and what is concerning is the mullah who is teaching these girls about how to interpret the Quran. And it is just not, it's quite radical, or it's quite extreme. And what the general support does the Taliban have in Afghanistan? I don't think there's any. Two things. People are against the Taliban because they lose their freedom. They cannot walk the streets of Kabul without being attacked, or the probability of being attacked. And there's also a number of my friends said, I asked him how's he doing with his family. He said, well, the Taliban that lives in my neighborhood is okay. We still go to the mosque and pray together, so I'm okay. So there's a bit of a different case by case, different depending on the regions. The more remote, the more harsh they employ the restrictions on women. But so far, Kabul, out of security, they would not. I haven't heard strict restrictions on Kabul with women. I spoke to a friend yesterday. Some women are still walking the streets of Kabul, so that's not as bad as in the remote areas. But there has been a long-standing discussions about who financed, who supported the Taliban, and Afghans would point to Pakistan. Although Pakistan would be one of the first go-to in terms of evacuation, like in Peshawar, they hit Peshawar through Torkan and Quetta, etc. There's other ways of them getting out there, but Pakistan is the nearest that they can run at the moment, or they can evacuate. There's China as well, with the recent sort of deal that China has. It was reported, I do apologize, I could not recall where, but they were doing a business deal. And it may not be new, because they have been doing these deals as the shadow governor, shadow mayor. They do have their own little autonomy in terms of how they run the show in their own territory. So I guess that's it. How do I, okay, but that, if somebody can help me out, I'm trying to get out of, I think that's it from my end. If anyone has any questions, unfortunately, I do not have all the answers, but I'm more than happy to do the best I can with what I know. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mbak Mita, for your presentation. So this is already give some kind like a glimpse of Afghanistan, what is the situations there. So I will, because we have a limited time, so I will not, how to say, make summarize of your presentation. So maybe we can now move now to Singapore. So we invite Ibu Jolene, Miss Jolene JERARD. She is also expert on Afghanistan because she also write an article about Afghanistan and the current situation and the threat might be to the region. So I invite Ibu Jolene or Miss Jolene to share your presentations with us, and you not only share presentations, share your experience, information, and whatever you know regarding the situations in Afghanistan and what is actually the impact in Singapore and our regions. So the time is yours, Ibu Jolene.
Thank you so much. Terima kasih, Ibu Deti. Good afternoon, everyone. I trust you can hear me. Just give me a while I try and transition to the slides. Just give me a second. Okay, I'm appearing to have trouble transitioning to the slides. Just give me 2 minutes. If not, I will go without the slides, okay?
Jolene, do you want me to help you? You can send to Dete and I can put in the screen.
I think the image is a bit large, but what I can do is to send it after the event, if that helps. Because
Okay.
I've got some images here. Nanti, let me just try one more time. Okay, it still looks as if it does not allow me to share, but no problem. Let me just proceed without it. I trust everyone can hear me.
Can you speak a bit loud, Jolene? Because
okay, I can.
Yeah. And your time 15 minutes, yeah? Thank you, Jolene.
No
okay, please.
Okay, so I think one of the key questions that has often been surfaced when we are thinking about this rise of the Taliban and its implications to our region. So I positioned this quick presentation of about 15 minutes that will focus on a few things. Certainly for our collective region, and I know we're asked to focus in terms of the lenses from Singapore, the Philippines, as well as Malaysia. But I think from my perspective, I would say that when we are looking at the threat arising from the rise of the Taliban and its implications, ever since when you're thinking about on the 15th of August, when the Taliban officially took over, to where we are sitting here today on the 30th of August, 2 weeks later, we can collectively agree that security continues to remain a foremost task for all our governments in the region. It is vital that the region as a collective remains robust in their efforts to isolate, contain, and mitigate or reduce these security threats. I think as a region, how we think about the threat will influence our collective broader policies and the positions that are undertaken. And simultaneously, this will impact the manner through which we collectively deal with the threat, our understanding of these implications, and certainly the broader questions that are asked in terms of what is the spin-off to potential threats raised in terms of the role of women. Certainly today, managing information in the age of insecurity is a very critical and central challenge of our time. This transformation has led to a very large and enormous impact on the way society as a whole views information, and we see this information overload over the past 2 weeks as we look at the chaos happening on the ground. The Twitter accounts by the spokesperson of the Taliban, Zabihullah Mujahid, going viral. Certainly them talking about in their press conference on the 17th of August in terms of what has been deemed and called Taliban 2.0. Would it be a more improved version of itself? Certainly in terms of this increased, like a tsunami of information that has come through, managing this information in this age of insecurity has been a collective challenge I think we all face. This transformation has had an enormous impact on the way in which we today think about, how we come together to discuss these issues, even over Zoom, and certainly in terms of how we are going to collectively, I say collectively simply because I see the region as a collective, and impact on the Philippines or the impact on Indonesia will certainly have a ripple effect on Singapore or Malaysia. So I see it as a collective block, and how as we look at groups that are be it aligned with Al-Qaeda or groups that are aligned with the Islamic State, certainly we are looking at these group dynamics in the Middle East playing out, especially when you are looking at pledges of allegiance or discussions on the ground in terms of the possibility of maybe even sending fighters to the Taliban areas, or looking at maybe sending people to Afghanistan. So although when you're thinking about April 2021, when the official announcement was made with the withdrawal, ending what would have been considered America's longest war, after 20 years on, the Taliban's takeover was cemented on the 15th of August, 2 weeks ago. And one of the things that I do recall, even on my early visits to Kabul, was something that was often spoken of on the ground, almost like an Afghan adage, like a paribahasa that they use on the ground, right? You have the watch, I have the time. It was a phrase that was often used on the ground. Certainly then for the Taliban, whenever they spoke or whenever former warlords used to speak, this concept of you have the watch, I have the time, was a position that they had where they are thinking about the fact that of how they will have to have this sense of perseverance to continue, the willingness to wait for an opportune time. So discussions were always underway over the last 2 decades of the fact that foreign presence would not always be there in Afghanistan, right? There was always an idea that there was always about this building of capacity. But today, when this phrase, certainly as I reflect on what has happened over the past few years, this phrase of you have the watch, I have the time, to me today, the idea of I have the time for the Taliban is almost a vindication. The fact that they had waited their time for 20 years. And with that, they had the opportunity. So to me, it was about this idea of strategic patience, the strategy of patience, and what it means in terms of this moral validation it provides for groups in the region. So what are our region's collective concerns? This includes the immense geostrategic implications and the anxieties that all our governments collectively has as we think about what it means for the communities here. One thing to note, as the previous esteemed speaker had also highlighted, the Taliban is not a monolithic entity. The UNSC, or the United Nations Security Council, had underscored that the Taliban partners with more than 20 other regionally and globally focused groups within the Taliban, within the Afghan area. So today, while we recognize and we speak about the rise of the Taliban and its implications and its impact on women as well, certainly one thing to recognize at the outset is the various contours that the Taliban has, and certainly with that, its collective implication to global security. And as a result, over the past 2 weeks, you have seen a lot of discussions taking place on projections onto threat dynamics on the ground. So for our region, what does it mean? It means an ability to have an opportunity to train and rebuild. Certainly, it's a very sobering backdrop where historically within our region, we have seen extremist groups have this link or this historical linkage with Afghanistan. You would well remember and recall how within our region, we had groups such as JI recruit and send several batches to Afghanistan between 1979 to 1989. You have seen in the Philippines with Abdurrajak Janjalani, for example, with the Abu Sayyaf, having even fought in the Soviet-Afghan War. So this historical memory, like JI or the ASG, for Southeast Asian fighters, these experiences in Afghanistan built a sense of solidarity. Over the years, we tended to refer to them as the Southeast Asian Afghan Alumni Network, for good reason, because of that experience that has left an indelible mark on the way in which individuals there had perceived the global view, as well as this increase in collective combative experience that they had on the ground. So this collective combat experience then trickled down and had a ripple effect in our region. So within Southeast Asia, certainly we're looking at Al-Qaeda aligned groups, as well as IS or Islamic State aligned groups. On 17th of August, JAS, through their spokesperson, Abdul Rahim Bashir, issued his praise and congratulations, right? One of the first few within our region to issue praise and congratulations to the Taliban. But likewise, you have seen voices come from the ground, voices from the general community, voices from extremist groups. And we have seen a whole slew, be it from Syria to Jordan to Southeast Asia. You have seen these pockets and voices come out, some of whom in congratulations, speaking of praise of what the Taliban had done. But certainly we also recognize, just like the Taliban is not monolithic, it's not singular, certainly we recognize that while we are speaking about the Taliban, there are groups. So when you're thinking about the Taliban, I know there was a couple of questions in the chat where you're looking at the Taliban, the terrorist group, the Islamic State, as well as Al-Qaeda. All three would be considered terrorist groups, but between these groups, there are ideological differences. So with the group that had conducted the attack, the Islamic State Khorasan province, primarily this would be the Islamic State. So the Islamic State offshoot that is present in South Asia and Central Asia. That is what ISK refers to, or ISIS-K, I think someone in the chat was asking about it. When you are thinking about Islamic State Khorasan province, ISKP, and its implications, we recognize that between the ISKP or the IS groups and Taliban, there is friction, there is tension. So when you're thinking about ISKP on the ground, you are looking at the fact that the Islamic State Khorasan province does not like the fact that the Taliban has protection sometimes of its Shia communities, or it has clashes with the fact that the Islamic State groups and its offshoots regard Taliban as being very nationalist in its disposition and how it conducts itself, whereas IS tries to promote a more global agenda, for example. The second challenge that we see, so the first challenge is certainly the idea of the Al-Qaeda aligned or the IS aligned groups and its conversations that are taking place in the region. So while we look at the rise of the Taliban, we cannot ignore these group dynamics, which will play out on the ground, as you rightfully saw with the attack that took place that was claimed by Islamic State Khorasan. You also see the fact that there is conversation that is being emboldened on the ground, the strength of the long game. Taliban, like Al-Qaeda aligned groups and IS aligned groups, have consistently held aspirations for territory. They always want physical territory. Al-Qaeda aligned groups like JI have often been critiqued by other similar minded groups for taking a position of stepping back from violence. So this idea of JI pursuing preparation for warfare, or IDAD, for example. So the strategic value of the long game of what the Taliban had done certainly will embolden groups in the region, fueling sentiments that there is some level of reward for perseverance, regardless of the length of time or the runway ahead. It is almost sort of an assurance that they see through the experience of the Taliban. They too are emboldened with this assurance of divine intervention, which would allow them victory over the enemy. The Taliban's achievement in this case was something that what the Taliban achieved was something IS had not achieved, the takeover of an entire country. So certainly the Taliban takeover has shown this, for the region, the strength of this long game, the strategic value of patience. It has fueled discussions on the idea of legitimate territory, inspiring fighters. It has certainly the fact that the fighters wanting to go to maybe Taliban, to Afghanistan to fight, this has been limited by even with COVID restrictions or travel restrictions. But nonetheless, these emboldened conversations still take place online. And this concept of this breaking of walls strategy that we initially saw with IS, but Taliban made significant inroads through this strategy of freeing prisoners, who in turn lend skill sets and building their ranks, mirroring this campaign that was used by IS to swell or increase its ranks. In Kandahar, the Taliban overran the Kandahar Central Jail, releasing inmates who joined the ranks of the Taliban. Similar instances of prisons being taken over or overrun have given hope to terrorist and extremist inmates. So within your medium or high value security prisons within our region, certainly there is conversations that will be taking place in terms of them feeling encouraged by this turn of events. So more so, when you're thinking about this long-term value of this strategy of patience, vindicated by a moral victory, the Taliban will continue to ride this moral victory, affirming their belief that Afghanistan, for us, when you're thinking about how many countries and empires had gone in, and foreign powers had gone in, and they will continue that narrative that none have claimed victory over Afghanistan so far. And this will be a sustaining moral leverage that will act as a beacon for the groups within the region. So certainly over the last 2 decades, as the counterterrorism community within our Southeast Asian region has shored up regional counterterrorism capability, I think a way in which, before I conclude in trying to look at these streams and implications certainly that we have in terms of dynamics on the ground, we are looking at this idea of what I call the trident, or TRIDENT. Okay? The trident to me is an approach to learn from retrospection, build resilience, and inspire resolve amongst counterterrorism practitioners to get best practices and to reduce its impact on society. So the role in which, when we think about this idea of the trident, to me, it's a short form, like kata singkatan, yeah, it's just a short form. The T stands for this transformative power of technology. And we will see its implication, including this expansive role that women will be allowed to play in some of these conversations. So although when the spokesperson for the Taliban comes out speaking of a version of maybe Taliban 2.0, but at the same time, you would see pushback from the ground, but you also see at the same time voices coming from the communities in terms of looking at maybe an expanded role of women. The R in the trident looks at continued radicalization, recruitment on the ground, simply because of the win that the Taliban has had and this wave of emboldened ideas that you see transforming the environment around us. The I in the trident stands for innovation. Innovation wherein groups will learn from each other. So be it whether we recognize these differentiations between the Taliban or Islamic State Khorasan, or when you're thinking about groups such as Al-Qaeda, you're looking at its implication where the groups will learn from each other. Innovation within groups, resulting in the D in the trident, a dense cross-pollination of ideas, where they learn from each other. These ideas will result in the E, or the E in the trident, referencing evolving trends. And these evolving trends are what together as a community today we come and try and discuss, to have some level of horizon scanning, threat projection into the future, and what it means in terms of groups having these evolving trends, learning from the N in the trident, new tradecraft and tactics, and ultimately the T in the trident, the idea of the need for trusted networks to come together to mitigate these threats. So today, as we think about this big picture, certainly the role of how the threat landscape will evolve in the last 2 weeks, we have seen a lot happen. Certainly on the ground, in terms of looking at the role of women, specifically, if you think about the role of women within the region, aggregating itself or aligning itself in terms of conversations with the Taliban, there have been some chatter on the ground, but not to a large extent. But that's not to say that it will not happen. Certainly as the groups as the Taliban continues to exercise and consolidate its power on the ground, you would see these unfold. And you've certainly seen the push even after the 17th August media address, where voices from the ground have been pushing back against this notion of whether it's just the spoken word and what it means on the ground in terms of how it materializes and unfolds in terms of the role and the position of women within a Taliban takeover and its impact on the ground. So as we conclude this session, I'll be happy to share my slides, although I have not been able to show them to you, but it will give you the broad picture that as we look at this shifting terrain and certainly these big questions that we will continue to ask ourselves, certainly within the role and the work of community as well as government agencies here through the lens of Singapore, certainly it is about looking out to the horizon, looking at groups that will tend to start aligning themselves with Al-Qaeda, looking at and learning from these best practices. But at the same time, I think this collective idea that today, as we come together as a region, we acknowledge the fact that while we may not see the complete nuances on the ground as it's fleshed out in the last 2 weeks, in terms of if we can critically pinpoint maybe new groups have come out, for example. But certainly what we collectively can acknowledge is that with these shifts on the ground, we will need to enhance cooperation within our region, encourage capacity building, as well as the role of civil sector organizations, and certainly explore the use of technology to support a lot of these efforts, simply because while people and the general populace in terms of the inability to travel has impacted all of us, these restrictions have also had an impact on the travel of foreign fighters or those that may want to go to these territories to fight. But certainly what it has also opened up is the avenue from the technological domain. So in conclusion, in an era that is certainly volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, certainly these conversations that speak of vision, understanding, clarity, and agility. So a VUCA environment needing a VUCA thought process, one of vision, understanding, clarity, and agility to navigate these scenarios in the near-term future, especially in the near-term future to come. Thank you. So let me pass the floor over to Ibu Tete.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you, Jolene. I think Jolene maybe lost her signal, so she suddenly disappeared. But okay, I think the last message from Jolene is very interesting. That okay, maybe within these 2 weeks we cannot see yet what is happening underground, but we have to strengthen our collaboration. I think this is a really good message for us. Okay, to anticipate that, we have to strengthen and we have to building our capacity. And how do we strengthen it and how do we building our capacity? We can discuss it after, before we close these sessions. Okay, then because we have only, we can proceed further to HAFIZA. HAFIZA, maybe you can now take the floor and then share with us what is happening in Malaysia and what is the response from
Hello?
I can't hear anything.
I can't hear anything. I lost Dete. Or is it just me or
Semua, it's all of us.
No, I think Dete lost her connection.
I think it's Dete.
We lost Dete, but we can proceed with HAFIZA.
Yes, I'm Eka, also from SURF. Miss HAFIZA, maybe you can continue.
I don't know if Dete has shared my slide with the organizer.
I have your slide. It's in the PDF, right?
Yeah, it's in PDF. Yeah. Okay, so can you share it, please? Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, Assalamualaikum everyone. My name is Hafiza Radin. I'm from University Malaysia Sabah. So today I'm going to share my insight on the victory of Taliban and its impact on Islamist militancy network in Malaysia. Basically, I would like to highlight here why is it hard? Why it is hard to defeat the Taliban, and what does it imply to Southeast Asia? Next slide, please. You can move to the next slide. I think the first to present, they've already highlighted something on the political context in Afghanistan, especially at the first speaker, she have highlighted as well the ethno-political composition in Afghanistan. So I would like to bring us back to explore the geopolitics in Afghanistan, because without understanding the context of history and also geopolitics in Afghanistan, it's hard for us to understand the nuances of the Taliban and why it's hard actually to defeat the Taliban. So, of course, the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan begins in 1979, and there's a proxy war here. The US with international allies. They collaborate, and then we have also de facto powers such as Pakistan involved in the war. In 1989 to 1992, after the Soviet decided to withdraw their troops, we can see that civil war erupted in Afghanistan. There has been two factions here led by Afghan Mujahideen and also the Afghan Taliban. We can see that the Afghan Mujahideen led by Ahmad Shah Massoud and also the Afghan Taliban led by Mullah Omar. So in the picture here we have Mullah Omar. And then in 1994, the Taliban rose to power and then led the government of Afghanistan. This is when we can see that the Taliban became the worst countries of across the world, according to World Bank, during the Taliban rule. And then after 9/11, the US decided to hunt down Al-Qaeda in the area of Fatah. So I would like to emphasize here that the security of Afghanistan also relies on its neighbors, such as Pakistan. And then, of course, we can see that the US and also United Nations, they began to install the interim government of Afghanistan, marked through the Bonn framework by UN, and then, of course, the installation of the interim government led by President Hamid Karzai, and then also the installation of constitutions such as Lower Jirga and also Walasi Jirga, constitute of upper house and also a lower house. Next slide, please. All right, and then we can see the involvement of a military by International Security Assistance Force by the UN, and also Operation Enduring Freedom by the United States. The mission here is winning hearts and minds of the Afghan population, state building, and of course governance, and the installation of all other essentials such as Afghan National Army, Afghan Auxiliary, and also peace talk with the Taliban. And I think this is from a recent statistic. Between 2001 until September 2019, the US had spent more than $1,978 billion for Afghanistan, and this excludes foreign aids, foreign assistance for Pakistan, because like I said earlier just now, the security of Afghanistan is rely heavily on its neighboring countries such as Pakistan. And then between that, we can see that the US also began its drone strike mission in the Fatah area. Fatah area is a neighboring region between Afghanistan and Pakistan, in which it becomes a safe haven for Muslim Mujahideen fighters, including Al-Qaeda. And then, of course, the drone strike and also even the military mission have created leadership decapitation, also more local resistance among the Afghan population. And then peace process conceded between 2012 until 2020. And then in February 2020, the US decided to release more than 5,000 Taliban prisoners. So this actually, I think the tipping point in which it leads to the rise of the Taliban. Somewhere in 2000 as well, peace talk resumed in UAE for full withdrawal transition of power sharing arrangement between the government of Afghanistan and also the Taliban. Next slide, please. So in that picture, we can see this is a peace process in Doha, took place last year. I think it's somewhere on August 2020. And then this is the map of Afghanistan and Pakistan. I would like to reiterate again, the security of Afghanistan also not only realizing within the internal dynamics of Afghanistan, but also its neighboring country in Pakistan. And the second map here, we have FATA, Federal Administrative Tribal Areas, in which we can see it became a safe haven for among the Pakistan Taliban groups. Bear in mind that some of these areas, such as North Waziristan and South Waziristan, has become an actually a historical place where local militia have actually lived in this area for centuries, such as the Haqqani network. But it was after 9/11, this group has been they've united under the banner of Tehrik Taliban Pakistan. They've united because of their common mission is to dismantle the presence of US and also international community in Afghanistan. So we have to also notice here that there are several factions. Before 2001, we have Afghan Mujahideen, we have Afghan Taliban, we have also Pakistan Taliban, which is another different entity. And then in this region of FATA, we have lots of tribal militant as well exist in the region. Next slide, please. Right. Okay. Here we have a structure of the Afghan Taliban and also the Pakistan Taliban. Again, it's a two separate entity. Afghan Taliban led by Mullah Omar, and then whereas Pakistan Taliban, or known as Tehrik Taliban Pakistan, they have also quite a very structured network in the area of FATA. And this is the new leader, Mufti Nur Wali Masood. He has been appointed as leader in 2018. Next slide, please. Okay. So what does it imply to us in Southeast Asia? I think those who are following on the development on Malaysia, we know that the emergence of Malaysian Islamist militancy began right after the AFPAC war. There are two kind of like a component that form the Malaysian Islamist militancy since the Afghan war. So the first entity is those who have been traveling to Afghanistan as Mujahideen fighters. And then we have another second entity which belongs to students network, and then they form a group known as Masa Pakindo. And although that the situation between 1980s until 1990s is quite complex, these Malaysian, they are segregated. They're not necessarily belong to a single entity, meaning to say some of them joined like Lashkar-e-Taiba in Kashmir, some of them joined the Al-Qaeda, and then some of them joined the Taliban forces. So this is what happened in 1980s until 1990s, and then somewhere in 1990s, KMM, Kumpulan Mujahideen Malaysia and Jamaah Islamiyah were formed. And then, of course, there are spillover effect of communal violence in Indonesia, such as in Ambon and Poso, and also in southern Philippines. So, and then in 2012 to 2019, with the emergence of ISIS, we can see that some of Malaysian former KMM member and also JI, they went to Iraq and Syria to join the ISIS. But again, we can see another similar pattern that they do not necessarily join ISIS. Some of them join Ajinat Asham, and some of them join Jabatun an-Nusra. while some continue remain as an ISIS member. Also, in this recent year, I think I would like to highlight, I think somewhere in 2000, the peak is between 2014 until 2016, cross-border terrorism within the bordering state of Sabah towards southern Philippines, among kidnapping for ransom, and also Abu Sayyaf group also emerged and exists, and there has been Indonesian militant that have been traveling to southern Philippines via Sabah. So I will also mention this briefly in the next slide. So next slide, please. Next slide, please. Oh, in this picture we can see from the previous slide, the pictures was it's I think one of Malaysian militant who have been trained in Afghanistan. So in this slide, we can see that there are two pictures here. So the first picture is comprised of Malaysian militant who fled to southern Philippines. And then the lower one, we have Muhammad Rafiuddin. He's one of the key player of Katiban Nusantara. He was also former members of KMM. So we can see that there are several features defining Islamist militancy in Malaysia. First, they remain a close-knit, familial, and also based on friendship network. We can see also there has been like regional connection with southern Philippines and Indonesian counterparts. And these Malaysian, they often fled to southern Philippines as their potential exile. Malaysian authority, I think they have Malaysian authority have been very quite not tolerating this element. So we have a very strict law in Malaysia in countering terrorism in the country. Also, we can see that since the fall of KMM and JI, Malaysian Islamist militancy continued to remain as a small cell, and they connected with regional and transnational group. So we can see that some of these individuals that actor, they joined Jabhatut al-Nusra, ISIS, ASG, Ajnat Asham, and so on. Whereas Malaysia remains as a passage or as a transit, because sir, it's not so surprising because in Malaysia is the only countries that has the lowest terrorism incidents as compared to Indonesia and also Philippines. And then, of course, we do have, there's women's roles in the networking of Islamist militancy, in terms especially on strategic marriage to secure the networking. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Right, okay. Women's involvement in militancy. So, okay, this is based on my PhD research from 2012 until 2019. So I've collected a large data based on open sources. So between 2012 and 2019, there are about 296 cases that I found. And out of these, 166 unknown names, meaning to say I have information such as probably their location or where they have been, but there is no name. So 166 is quite a lot, and I cannot find any further information about this. And out of these 166 unknown names, there are 9 females unidentified name, and 133 identified lists of names, including 10 females with names. So here I provide 3 examples, such as policewoman Corporal Jus Ninawati Abdul Ghani, 35, who was found guilty of deliberately withholding information on terrorist group and was sentenced to maximum 7 years. And then we have also Umi Kalsum Bahak, who was apprehended at the immigration counter at KLI Etsu en route to Brunei, Istanbul, and Syria to marry an ISIS militant, Muhammad Akif. And then we have here Muhammad Najib Hussein, who fled to southern Philippines and married to a Filipino. Next slide, please. Right. I think with counterterrorism in Malaysia, and why it can explain why there has been low terrorism incident in Malaysia, because the law is multidimensional. It comprises of hard counterterrorism and also soft counterterrorism approach. We have certain law such as POTA, SOSMA, and also the radicalization and rehabilitation program for former detainees. And this also goes back to counterinsurgency approach between 1980s to until 2000 with Malaysian Internal Security Acts and also POCA. But I'm not going to elaborate further on this. Next slide, please. So my last slide. I think the main concern here whether the theater of Afghanistan will ignite future radicalization in Southeast Asia. I think that's why our speaker invited all finalists from different countries, and my answer would be yes. And also, I think that as for Malaysian counterpart, they will continue to move in a very small and scattered network. So there could be a potential of foreign terrorist fighters recruitment. We also need to look at, especially on regional security and stability, especially in the southern Philippines, because what we can see here, such as Abu Sayyaf elements in southern Philippines. They have begun to sweep into the state of Sabah in East Malaysia. So this is another quite alarming development for us. Also, we need to look at the context of porous border between neighboring countries, between Malaysia, Indonesia, and Philippines, and how militancy network might exploit this porous border. And then as for the context of Afghanistan, although that we are not so sure what is the actual border security in Afghanistan, but I think that there might be likely that this FTF might travel from anywhere from Southeast Asia and through Pakistan, and then from Pakistan to Fatah and then towards Afghanistan. We also need to look closely, other than ISKP, we need to look closely at the development on support for the Afghan Mujahideen faction, because these two arch rivals has been fighting against each other for centuries. So the question now whether potential FTF emergence in Southeast Asia might show their support for Afghan Mujahideen faction or the Taliban faction. I think that's all from my presentation, and I look forward towards our discussion. Can you just move to last slide, please? And this is my contact information in case if you need to be in touch. Many thanks.
Okay, thank you, Hafiza, for your presentation. It's really good that you raised the concern, because we are actually having the same concern. Yeah? So I'm really sorry I was, quit from the chat because of the discussion, because my battery is finished. So now I'm back. So, okay, thank you, Hafiza, for your presentations. And now we move to Alex from the Philippines. Maybe Alex can explain to us what is the response, especially there is Abu Sayyaf, there is radicals groups there, local, the ISIS group also. So maybe Alex, you can share with us what is the situation in the Philippines. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuhu to everyone. Ma'am Diti, I believe I have a short presentation. So, yeah. But I would like to inform our colleagues and participants that, Philippines is currently winning the peace against the group of extremists in southern Philippines, and the indicators are the increased numbers of surrenderies from the Abu Sayyaf group. So hopefully it will strengthen more because Philippines has developed a national action plan And now the Barm government is going into a regional action plan on PCBE, CSO, NGO, international NGO, and government are working together on PCB program in Southern Philippines. I have to say that because it is related to my assessment, my point of view from the Southern Philippines. And next slide, ma'am. Hello, ma'am. Yes, I am expected to share 4 super tough questions. Number 1, are there any women's movement being formed within radical groups as a result of victory of the Taliban? And for now, women's group, none so far since the Taliban recognized rights of women after certain issues are faced on media. So the Taliban are being vocal that they're going to, recognize the rights of women, that women can go to work, that women can perform their daily tasks. So from the perspective of women, it's like waiting. Are they committed with their commitment? There could be an intention, maybe there could be an intention from the women's but that's unlikely to prosper since Taliban committed to recognize. Because of that recognition publicly that they're going to recognize the rights of women, then unlikely it will not prosper. Maybe an intention if in case it will not be recognized after all. So I think that's my point on women's movement. So far there is non-movement from the women's in the radicals group. Next, ma'am. Where second, is there any underground movement that has taken place as a response of the victory of the Taliban? For now, it's early to tell. I believe the local terrorists will, although take advantage and be inspired to assert and capitalize the Taliban victory. Of course, there will be, their morale will be boosted because they have the same objective of establishing Islamic governance, the Sharia law, and but as to the implementation or the ways that the mechanism of implementing that objective is totally different, the Taliban and the local terrorists. So it will really give an impression to the terrorist group. It strengthens their aspirations, their objectives of establishing an Islamic state here in the Southern Philippines. So it will give a positive aspiration to our local terrorists here in the Southern Philippines. Next, ma'am. So how are CSO in the Philippine government responding to the situation? Well, accordingly, for the government, the priority is safety of our nationals in Afghanistan. Although the Taliban will allow people to leave the country even after August 31, which is the deadline set for the US and NATO forces to leave. The president of the Philippines welcomed the Afghans who wants to leave their country as a humanitarian gesture of our government to provide refuge in the Philippines. So that is the priority of our government right now, to the safety of our nationals at Afghanistan. And of course, to show a humanitarian gesture, he welcomed Afghan who wants to leave their country and would like to stay in the Philippines. And as I've said earlier, that the president, the fight of the President Duterte administration on violent extremism is being loaded at the Southern Philippines because of the, we developed a comprehensive national action plan and to counter and prevent violent extremism in Southern Philippines. So for the CSO, next, ma'am. For the CSO, we continue to implement PCB program on the ground. Although we need to strengthen monitoring of movements of the local terrorist groups, strengthen collaboration with government on resources and access for PCB project. Currently, we are really in good implementation, like the international government, the government are working together. We have so many PCB program in Sulu and in Barm mainland. So we are actually winning the peace. We are winning the peace because the increase of numbers of surrenderies from the Abu Sayyaf group. And CSO continue to implement PCB program, PCB project in Marawi, and Maguindanao, and especially in Sulu. So in Sulu, we are working, the government and the CSO are working together to strengthen the reintegration program. This is the only mechanism that we could prevent, that the surrenderies to be radicalized again or be inspired to join again, to improve our reintegration program on the surrenderies, the Abu Sayyaf surrenderies in Sulu. Next, ma'am. For my last sharing, what are the possible threats that might occur in the Philippines and the region due to the victory of the Taliban? Well, I have provided for a possible assertion of the same objectives of establishing Islamic governance and southern Philippines. Second, it will boost the morale of the local terrorist groups and adapt their ideologies and ideologies in the country. The possible threat of logistical and financial support to local terrorist group in the country. If the Taliban export their ideology to the Philippines or other country, that will radicalize the Muslim in the country. I mean, this is the only fear, especially for the women, Muslim women, are that the ideologies or the suppression of the women's rights, if those extreme ideologies will be imported to us, then it's going to be a big problem as to the assertion of the women's rights. So the following are my sharing on the possible threat in southern Philippine, ma'am. If I think we will give the time to our other participants to give their sharing. Especially we have so many participants from the Philippines, but from my end, those are the threat that I am seeing, especially from the women sector in southern Philippines. So hopefully we can come up with a mechanism or a partnership to prevent, to be able to monitor and prevent the ideologies of the Taliban on women's rights. Thank you so much. That's all. Let's have the other time for the questions and sharing of other participants for the very fruitful topics.
Thank you, Alex, for your presentations, and you also raised the concern, that we have to do collaboration on how to prevent this the export of ideology from Taliban to the Southeast Asia. Okay, so now we have our last speaker, the gentleman, Mr. Nasir Abbas, who are already very long in GI, so maybe he can give us insight. What is actually GI response, especially the GI response towards the winning of Taliban, and then what is actually happening on the ground in the Southeast Asia, especially whether women also participate, or also glorifying, not only glorifying, but they are also preparing something on the ground. So if you have that information, it will be nice if you can share with us. Okay, Pak Nasir Abbas, are you with us? Hello, Bang Nasir.
Can you hear my voice?
Yes, I hear you very well.
Loud and clear.
Very good. Okay, now time is yours and floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mbak Deta. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and good afternoon for everyone. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm not sharing any slide, but because it's already been explaining about Taliban, just I want to explain about women. Some people say that is my expertise, but no. I just want to explain about women in.
Hello, Bang Nasir.
I can't hear anything.
Yeah,
Nasir.
I can't hear also. Bang Nasir, can you hear me? Hello? Hello?
I think we lost him. There, he's back.
Hello,
Yeah,
hello,
okay.
hello. Okay, I'm
Yeah,
not going because my signal is here. What
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
Wi-Fi
You can off your video. Yeah, you can off
okay,
your
I
video.
off my video. Okay,
Yeah.
now. So in Afghanistan, we know that there's Taliban and there's another group, ISIS, or we call IS Khorasan.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's another group, Ahmad Masud. But we not talk about Ahmad Masud. Now we talk about the IS Khorasan. Yeah, since IS or ISIS in Syria have been destroyed, and some of them try to look the alternative area. Some people said in Southeast Asia, but it's not a very good decision. But I heard that they go to the area that they call Khurasan. They believe that this area that been mentioned in Hadith about the Khurasan area. Khurasan is the name for the part area from Iran, Iraq, some part of Afghanistan, and also some part of Kazakhstan or Tajikistan. Yeah. So they say that this area is good. Now they use that area. Okay, and then in the lately they set up a bomb in Kabul. Okay, what is the difference between Taliban and IS Khorasan? Yeah, the first difference is Taliban, only just want to establish an Islamic state, but IS, they want to create an caliphate. It's not only one country. Yeah. The second is Taliban mazhab Hanafi, but IS mazhab takfiri or Wahhabi takfiri. Yeah. And IS or Taliban never force anybody to, never force any FTF, foreign terrorist fighter, to join with the Taliban. Yeah, but IS, forcing people to accept the caliphate and to do bay'at, to the Khalifa. Yeah, and Taliban never announced or never call to do any action in other country beside in Afghanistan. They're just only thinking Afghanistan. But IS, they have a mission to do operation in others country, not only in Afghanistan, different country, and they call to do an operation. So this is why a difference between Taliban and ISIS. Okay, now we look for the woman. The woman in Afghanistan, we can, some people sharing the photos during the 70s in Kabul. Yes, of course, in that area, at that time, Kabul is other secular government. Yeah, so some of the women, some of the like
we're losing you, Pak Nasir. Can you hear us? We lost you again. All right.
I'm back. Okay, sorry, I'm back. Can you hear me, Barita?
Yeah, we hear you, we hear you.
Hello?
Yeah, Bang, we hear you. Hello,
Can
Bang.
you hear my voice?
Yes,
Hello?
very clear. You can continue.
Anybody can hear my voice?
Yeah.
Itu jelas, Pak.
We can hear you, we can hear you.
I chat him through WhatsApp.
I'm back. Can you hear my voice? I'm back.
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay. Okay.
Continue.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah. Okay, I continue. Okay. So I just want to explain about the culture of the woman in Afghanistan. Yeah, the woman in cities or in urban is different with the woman in the villages or in suburb. Yeah. So Taliban and others Mujahideen, yeah, they have their own culture, how to treat the woman. Yeah, some people disagree with that, but that is their culture. They're wearing burqa, yeah, and then they also, I mean, in the woman for the role in family, yeah. For example, yeah, when a woman became the woman do the
Halo Bang Nasir. Halo Bang Nasir. Halo.
I'm back.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm back.
Okay, continue.
Okay, so the woman do all such kind of working inside the house, not only washing the clothes, not only cooking, but also looking for the firewoods, yeah, and also carrying the waters for the house, and do what to say, dealing with the goats, yeah, everything. So all the hard works in the house, women do that, yeah. So that is the role of women in the Afghanistan, in the villages. And also, while they are walking between husband and wife, the husband is walking in front and the wife is walking behind. Yeah, and my experience at that time also, whenever we ask the Afghanis people, yeah, about their children, they are always mentioning the boys, yeah, their son, not mentioning their daughters. It's look like it's like a taboo for them. If they mention they have the daughters, yeah, and they keeping the information about the numbers of their daughters, the age, the names, okay, because that is their culture. Whenever they want to, to manage the daughters with the others, and then they will look for the man or offering the man to get married with their daughters. So no one never knew about, never mentioned their daughters to the others. And also, yeah, about the marriage with the teenagers. Yeah. For us, yeah, it is a pedophile, but teenagers like 13 or 14 years old girls, it's what to say, it's their culture. Yeah, that is their culture. But somehow, but we, yeah, as our culture and also for the law, it is a pedophile to that is why, yeah, whenever Taliban control Afghanistan, and then they said they will respect with the human right, yeah, so it will not be the same like what happened in others country. Okay, go to the support of the woman, you know, the GI or the JAD or Indonesia, for example. Yeah, there's a famous group. Yeah, there's many radicalism or terrorist group in Indonesia, but
Bang Nasir, hilang lagi. Halo. Halo. Bang Nasir. Hello.
We
I
lost
think
him again.
Yeah, I think the
We
signal
lost
in
him again.
Yeah, the signal in Jogja maybe not good. Yeah, I mean in the place where
In
where
his
he
place, yeah.
Yeah.
He is our last speaker, right? So we
Right.
can proceed maybe in the interaction, our question and answer.
Yeah. Okay, so because we lost him several times, I think maybe we can, how to say, we can proceed with the discussions because we have many questions, yeah, regarding the, how to say, the presentations from the speakers while we're waiting. Maybe, hello?
Hello?
Hello? Yeah?
Can you?
Yeah. Okay, back.
Okay, you're back. You're back.
You're back again.
I'm back. Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
I continue.
Maybe
Sorry.
continue. Yeah. To the apa mungkin masuk ke ini Bang, ke mana ke what is the response? I mean, what is the impact of this
Okay, the impact
of Taliban?
Yeah, the impact for the woman. Yeah, in Indonesia.
For the woman especially.
Yeah, in Indonesia. Okay, especially the two famous group. That is JI and JAD. Yeah, Jamaah Islamiyah and JAD. I'm not mentioning for the others group because the others is not very famous, a small group. Yeah, but these two big group, I can tell that JI is support Taliban and Al-Qaeda. Yeah, but ISIS group like JAD, which affiliate with the ISIS, of course, they will affiliate also with the IS Khorasan. Yeah, so whatever IS Khorasan against, so they will also against. If the IS Khorasan against the Taliban, so they also against the Taliban. Yeah, and they disagree with what Taliban do, such as Taliban. Work with the Chinese, accept with the agreement and everything. Yeah, so they will not accept. Yeah, but for the JI woman, yeah, whatever the men, yeah, agree and support, they will also support. Yeah, I'm also hear from my wife, yeah, which is a Malaysian, and also have friends from the JI members in Malaysia. The JI members, women in Malaysia, also support Taliban, and they also, happy with the victory of Taliban. Yeah, and some of them say that if they can go to Afghanistan and join with the Afghanistan, they would go there. Yeah. So look, in this day, yeah, it's not only the man who has the high spirit; it's also the woman who has a similar high spirit. Whenever the men want to go to the war and battle, join with the jihad, the woman also have the same intention. Yeah. So this is what happened. If we look at the men like that, it means that the woman also have the similar intention. I think this is only that I can give the presentation, Mbak Deta. Yeah, thank you very much.
Oke, terima kasih Pak Nasir untuk presentasinya ini. Mungkin sinyalnya di Jogja kurang bagus ya. Semoga mungkin lokasinya yang membuat sinyalnya tidak bagus. Karena kadang-kadang memang di beberapa tempat sinyalnya not okay. Oh sorry, I'm speak bahasa. So okay. I just saying that okay, your signal is not good. Maybe in the place where you are staying the signal is not good. The network, the connection is not good. Okay, so we have our speaker has presenting their presentations, and we have many questions actually because I was kind of from the discussion before, so I only get 2 or 3 questions. So my colleagues Eka will read all the questions to the speaker. So Eka, I give you the floor to read the question from participants to the speakers because I only have 3, but Eka said there are so many. So okay, so Eka, please do so.
Okay, so I see there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 questions or 6 questions. The first question is about with Taliban's conservative strict norms against women's active involvement in terror activities and supports, will women's involvement in terrorism in Southeast Asia likely to increase? This is because for the past year, since ISIS and social media era, women's involvement are mostly conducted by ISIS-affiliated supporters. So this is the first question. And then the second question, how have female extremists in Singapore, Malaysia, and Philippines responded to Taliban's takeover of Ashraf Ghani's government? And then the third question, is there any evidence that Southeast Asia extremists are wanting to join the Taliban over the last few years? And has this intensified over the last few weeks? The fourth question, in addition to what previous questions, how has the terrorist organization in countries like Singapore, Malaysia, and Philippines respond to Taliban's successful use of strategic patience? Are there any organizations similar to GI in Indonesia that aims to adopt the same strategy? And another question from Mr. Daniel Williams. Honest question, do you think analyzing nasheeds and videos from the groups can tell us more about their goals? In my opinion, yes, but what do you think? And the last question, can you speak on the impact of feminism in urban and rural parts of Afghanistan? So those are the questions.
Okay, so I think this is all, yeah, Eka, yeah, questions?
Yes.
So, okay, thank you, Eka. So maybe, how to say, the first...
maybe we can start from the first question. Can I repeat again? Okay, the first question.
Yeah, Mbak Mita, first question will answer Mbak.
Taliban's strict norms against women's active involvement in terror activities as supports. Will women's involvement in terrorism are likely to increase?
Okay, so because I think all of the speakers are expert on Afghanistan, because when I saw the presentation, they are very expert. So maybe I give the floor first to Mbak Mita, yeah? Your answer, I give you 1 or 2 minutes to answer. So we have time for the other speakers.
Thank
Mbak
you.
Mita, yeah,
thank you.
please.
I guess I wanted to comment on Ibu Alex, on the whether the victory of Taliban would boost the moral groups in Indonesia. Yes, but in terms of how they will influence them, whether, now I have a number of notes here. I'm so sorry, but Taliban's expert. Okay, I can't even read my own writing. Sorry. Okay, I'll make it short, but. In terms of, I would like to respond to the feminism of, Eka, can you repeat to me what the feminism of the women in Taliban, something like that, I think? What was the last question?
The last question. Okay, one second, the last question.
Apology.
Can you speak the impact of feminism in urban and rural parts of Afghanistan?
When you talk about women movements and activists, they do have that already. It's been established since the fall of Taliban back in 2001. So I spoke personally to an activist lady from Herat, which is close to the Iranian border, and she did her own clandestine movement on educating girls. That's one of her things. And she finished her master's under the Taliban while she was, while she had her baby and breastfeeding her daughter. So there has been this movement, and now it was maintained. It was also supported by the internationals during the period of the last 20 years until 2 weeks ago. A lot of them, when they who can flee the place, they can escape, evacuate. That's what they did. Those who are not, they are in hiding. And as an example, which is not very lucky, unfortunately, sadly, one of the deputy mayor, governor, was captured. We have not heard anything of what happened to her. But in terms of women's movements, that has been a part of becoming encouraged, and the culture flourished. And I've been dealing a lot, even in elections, with women's groups, and they know what, they would come forward, they would fight for their seats, and which is great, but it will stay on clandestinely or depending on how much we in Southeast Asia and Indonesia is pushing our government to make sure that the policy of engagement with the Taliban government, whatever the form of government is to make sure that women is the top two policies in terms of maintaining these relations. Because certainly our Ministry of Foreign Affairs has met up with the Taliban leadership in Doha, not as a sole primary meeting, but there was some mentioning of the possible acknowledgement of the probable government. But that's the part where we need to make sure that our government has that understanding, the impact on women if we do not have some kind of restrictions, or what we would hear myself would be the economic embargo, for example. So that's just we need to do it just not just as civil society groups, but also at the policy level. So I guess that's my take. Thank you.
Thank you, Mbak Mita. So, Bu Jolene, is there any comment? If you can answer the other question also, that's really good, yeah? So I mean, not only for the first questions. Ibu Jolene?
Sure. Hi. Terima kasih, Pak Ibu Diti. I think one of the couple of the questions that were raised earlier in terms of the voices maybe coming from Singapore at the moment, in terms of from the research that I'm doing and my team is doing, any chatter in terms of, say, in terms of coming up from the local sentiment, there has been not very much, in fact. And I think that is why I sort of positioned the discussion looking at, when we are thinking about groups such as JI or JAD, I think it's important to recognize the transnational nature of the groups that we are speaking about and addressing. By virtue of that, to me, I always look at it as a collective, because the sentiment and the discussions that we see online cross-cut national and territorial boundaries sometimes. So as much as we try and segment it in terms of through the lenses of the groups in terms of perspectives from the region, I think it's important to recognize that the group itself that we are thinking about and talking about is transnational in nature. Meaning in terms of their ability to maybe even when, as Ibu Dete had earlier mentioned, if you're looking at chatter online, even if it comes out in Bahasa Indonesia, or if you're talking about Malay language, your ability to maybe read Bahasa or Malay or Arabic, or if you're maybe fluent in Dari or Pashto, you could potentially read across the spectrum. I think the other question that someone had raised in it, in terms of some of these questions that was raised in terms of the impact, I think, of India and the implications, the role of India in Afghanistan. I think this comes from, and I'll quickly address it, in terms of the geopolitical dynamics with the Taliban's takeover of Afghanistan. At the moment, a lot of, beyond the question of investments that India as a country may have in a place like Afghanistan, the bigger question that would stress them security-wise and geopolitically is that with the Taliban takeover, India's initial hedging towards working with the Northern Alliance. That's the group that is in Afghanistan at the Panjshir Valley fighting against the Taliban. So the geopolitical dynamics in a nutshell certainly will sway against their favor because Afghanistan has always been looked at as a proxy. I think earlier some of the presenters spoke about the Afghan Taliban versus the Pakistani Taliban. So for India, Afghanistan remains a proxy that it could have used to prevent the incursions from the Pakistani Taliban. That's a quick summary, but if there are further questions, I'll be more than happy to answer.
Okay, thank you. How to say, Ibu Jolene, for your wrap-up answer for all the questions. Yeah. So Ibu Hafiza, Hafiza, will you answer them? Will you answer the question? Not only the first questions. Yeah, if you can answer all the questions.
Okay.
Yeah, because we only have limit time. Ibu Hafiza, are you still there?
Ako na lang.
Si Hafiza.
Maybe the other speakers may share while waiting for Hafiza.
Okay, maybe Alex.
Oh, hi. Well, Ma'am Diti, they say that anything that is too much is not good. So meaning to say, if you know those extreme ideologies will be imposing to women in southern Philippines, most likely there will be more. You know, the extremists, the local groups would really capitalize these issues on women, so that they used it on recruitment, on inviting women using these issues. So it's really up to the women's movement on a positive movement to go against this ideology, to really work on the prevention of these extreme ideologies in coming into our country. So really, let's work together and work with the ulama, because we believe in the ulama in our country are moderate and are looking into the Sharia law that are suited for the modern women, we say. I mean, we are practicing Islam, but we do not agree with the kind of extremism on ideology that being imposed to women, to control women not to work, to control women not to participate in governance, and what the potentials of women can do in the society. So it's really hopefully it will not be escalating to the southern Philippines, what they are preaching in their country. I think that's it. That is from me. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Bang Nasir, are you still with us? Bang Nasir? Oh, he's disappeared. Hello, Bang Nasir? Hafiza, are you back?
Yeah, I think I'm just gonna respond to one of the questions.
Baru masuk lagi.
Baru masuk lagi. Okay, nanti Hafiza dulu Bang ya. After Hafiza, then your turn.
What update? Hafiza, okay.
Okay, I think I'm just gonna respond to the question of whether the Taliban can be a legitimate government. So I think I'm gonna respond to this question specifically. I don't think it's gonna be easy for the Afghan people to accept the Taliban as a legitimate entity. And on top of that, we are also seeing that the Taliban facing challenging from Afghan Mujahideen faction and also ISIS. So I think this development should be looked closely by governments in Southeast Asia, as well as, of course, we have to look closely as well with regional groups operating in Southeast Asia, such as Abu Sayyaf. I think that's all from my end. Back to you, Dete.
Thank you, Hafiza. To Bang Nasir. So we know that I will sharpen the questions that now Taliban already, gain the victory. They win the game, yeah. But now the Taliban also faced resistance from ISIS and also from Northern Alliance. Do you think that it will dim the spirit of the supporter here in Indonesia because now Taliban get resistant, or there will be the same? I mean, they still use the victory of Taliban to for their propaganda in recruiting the people, especially the women.
Hello,
Bang Nasir? Yeah.
Yes, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah, we hear you very well.
Yes, of course, Taliban will facing the resistance from the groups, ISIS-K and also
Northern Alliance.
Mujahideen,
Mujahideen.
Yeah. The people from the groups
Abang, your voice is not clear. Hello.
used to be on our and they moved.
Hello, you are frozen. And hello, Bang Nasir.
I suggest, Pak Nasir, can you
now I'm back.
use
I'm
the
back.
chat box?
Yeah, okay.
Better use the chat box to respond for the meantime because we are losing you, and we give the chance to others who want to. There are people raising their hands. Dete, maybe we can hear first from them.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah,
I just chat. Okay, I just chat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So there is I see someone raising hands. So okay, maybe we can also give how to say who raised the hand, because I cannot see the names. Maybe I cannot see the names in my handphone.
David and Diana.
Oh, Diana is the speaker and did it maybe, yeah? So we give time to did it.
Okay, thank you very much, and thanks a lot for the presentation. Just to say a few words on Afghanistan. I've been there for at least 6 years. I worked for the UN there. There are three factions within Taliban. It's not that it's a very monetary movement. It's not a homogeneous movement. It's a heterogeneous movement, and there are much more. There will be, with the time, there will be a lot of dissensions within these three factions. I would say one faction, which is extremely radical, is the Haqqani network, which was based until 2 weeks ago in Miramshah, in Pakistan. And the second faction is the Quetta Council. Quetta Council is the leading council. Mullah Omar was there, and now Mullah Baradar and others are from there. And the third one, which is the weakest one, is the Council of Peshawar. It doesn't work like you can imagine. With the time, there will be more and more dissension. If Taliban have to follow up what is the international community's request, of course, there will be much more dissension within the group. There will be some of these foot soldiers, or the most they who come from the rural areas, from southeast, east, and other very rural areas. They will join, of course, Daesh, which is easy to join because they are not satisfied with the response of the leading group. To me, the Central Command has a challenging time, actually, because they have to homogenize and they have to have the control over everything, over all these sections, which is not so easy. Then on India, we have to be careful what we say about India. It doesn't work like that. India of today, it has nothing to do with the India of 15 years ago or 20 years ago. India of today is like Trump. First India. This is the motto of the current government, and they haven't put anything on the table with Afghanistan. That's why the pave was open to Taliban. India is not much involved today. It is not. The countries that are involved are probably Pakistan by far. Is a victory for Pakistan. This one, and the second one. The second one is I'm sorry. You were talking about India. Then India is completely over. Is not really involved. Probably even Iran and Russia, they are actually, all of them, they are careful, they are watching it rather than anything. Of course, both of them are happy because US lost. I mean, for them, US lost. Our US is no more in Central Asia physically present. On the if the Taliban took over because the people are happy, absolutely no. That has nothing to do. One has nothing to do with the other. You have a corrupt government. You had a corrupt government since 2001. You had a corrupt government since 2001, and the government was not really satisfying the population. What you have is that the people are neither love Taliban. Is that the people become spectators when the government, when the international committee, for example, 2004, was shaking the General Darwin or something like that, was shaking the hand of one of the biggest criminal, John Muhammad Khan in Uruzgan. Of course, they were shaking the hands of, the population were discussed. I mean, but were discussed by the international community, by the government who appointed the criminal, and then, of course, by Taliban also. Then the population become spectators rather than getting directly loving one or other. The other issue is that it's not so easy to say that Taliban will keep a lot their time. I mean, first of all, if the question is, will be there a government that will represent all the groups? Even if I would say this happens, there is a question to ask: how long they will be together? Not so easy to have an illiterate with on the top of you. I'm not sure that those you call it mujahideen is not mujahideen. Is the people who have been who say that they are in the resistance. Not sure that these people they would work with Taliban for a long time. I do not believe it. Then there will be, of course, progressively a conflict within the groups. If there are negotiations currently, there will be, of course, groups that will fight against each other. I mean, that I do not believe of this government that will compose everyone and that will be composed by everyone. I do not believe it. For the first 12 people in the council, just only is half Tajik. The rest are all Pashtun from south and southeast. This doesn't represent anything of reality of the country. On the woman, I have to say Taliban are by far much closer to Al-Qaeda than Daesh. Then their vision on women is not the same as Daesh, that they can attack or they can get involved in everything. Taliban, I've never had a suicide bomber, woman suicide bomber. The only one who was close to be suicide bomber was coming from Pakistan and not from Afghanistan, and she was arrested, I think, in Turhan Bandar. Wow, at the border with Pakistan and Nangarhar. Then India, I mean, if there is other question, please. If there are other questions, I can answer. Yeah, then Taliban are composed by many. Please.
Sebab sendiri belajar. Okay, thank you, Pak. Thank you. Did it, or did it? Okay, thank you for your explanations about Afghanistan. So actually, we have many experts on Afghanistan here. And it seems that there are so many questions still in the chat box regarding there are many questions about Afghanistan in the chat box, but we already, the time is already 16 to 10, and our discussions is about what is the impact to the Taliban, the glorifications of Taliban to the Southeast Asia. So our speaker already raised that there is, Jolene already remind us with many, the strategies, the big pictures. And also, HAFIZA already mentions about there is possibility of recruitment underground. And also, Nasir also asking the same questions. And then actually we're emphasizing now what we should do now. Because, even though, the Taliban are facing resistance, but I think the radicalist group, they still moving underground. So either in Indonesia, in Malaysia, in Philippines, yeah. So now what we should do to overcome this, to prevent this, and what kind of capacity building, because Jolene mentioned about capacity building, what kind of capacity building we need to strengthen in our regions in order to prevent recruitment. What we actually worry is about recruitment, using the glorification to recruit, because in Indonesia, for example, they already use Taliban. They use the propaganda that Afghanistan gets victory because of the Taliban, and the Taliban is actually literally means student. So they are maybe targeting the student, actually. They are encouraging the student. So this is what we have to putting the attention to, and I think they might be using the same strategy in other countries. So are we going to discuss it now about what we should do, or we still want to discuss about Afghanistan, because I think there are still many questions about Afghanistan. So this is a hot topic, yeah, to discuss. So because the intention of the webinar is not only to share information, but we also could come up with the how to say the common platform, common agenda within the region. So any friend who can give me feedback or about this, because if we want to continue discussions, because we already late by 12 minutes, so are we going to continue the discussions, or we will open another session 2 of the discussion about Afghanistan? Memen, do you have any idea?
Thinking, because we're really planning a series, right? A series of webinars. I'm thinking that in our next webinar, let's invite the same people who are here, but let's focus on what can we do?
Okay.
Or what should we do? How do we protect our women and our youth from being recruited? What can be best practices out there that we can make use of and learn from each other?
Okay.
That's my suggestion.
Okay. So later we have maybe the second webinar, yeah, because this is first webinar. We actually have a plan. We have planned 4 webinar, yeah, discussing about women's and violence extremism. So maybe the second webinar that we will initiate to do in next week, maybe we will discuss further on the the common platform or the agenda that we can do, yeah, to prevent this the glorification of Taliban and its impact to our regions. Okay, I agree with you, Memen. So maybe we still we already over 14 minutes. Are we going to continue until 6:30? Because I saw there is still many questions, yeah, regarding Afghanistan issue. For example, like from Deka, I read the question from Deka. For the all presenters, what do you think about Taliban as an organization? How organizationally cohesive or ideologically unified Taliban is? Is there any possibility that Taliban will break up into many factions and put Afghanistan into another episode of civil war, like in the 80s? That is one question. And the other from Muhammad Ilyas, can you speak about why the US did not accept the offer of Taliban to hand over Osama in the early 2000s? And Amaya, do you think there will be reaction in Indonesia out of Hambali? Yeah, the Hambali will be executed, yeah? Will be the session, court session will be the trial today at Guantanamo. So do you think there will be reactions in Indonesia, especially from GI, yeah? GI supporters. So maybe this is for the question for NASIR ABBAS, because he knows better, yeah? And then from Farouk, this is to Daniel, but Daniel is not speaker. So we focus on the speaker only, yeah? So there is still this kind of questions. There is another one from Francisca. Is there any possibilities that Taliban will also use women as fighters, considering their recent statement and perspective on women? So this is 4 questions. So maybe we can continue, if you don't mind, until 14:30. And after that, we have to wrap up the discussion and the discussions on the common agenda for preventing the euphoria of Taliban will be discussed in the next webinar. So, okay, the speakers, there are 4 questions. I think one is directed to Pak NASIR ABBAS. If you are still here, maybe you can answer. What is the response of GI senior official regarding the Hambali trial?
Yeah, Adete, Pak NASIR also made a very good point in the chat box, so people can also read as part of his response to the earlier question. But if I may also read questions, like there are also other comments, but there's a question here for all the presenters. What do you think about Taliban as an organization? How organizationally cohesive or ideologically unified Taliban is? Is there any possibility that Taliban will break up into many factions and put Afghanistan into another episode of civil war? And then there's also a question about what are the prospects of the Taliban surprising us by taking a more moderate stance as they are currently espousing? And if so, what are the implications of this to those who are inspired by them in our region? Yeah. I think those are two related questions. I hope our panelists can respond to this.
Yeah. May I?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, please.
So you have 2 minutes. Yeah. Every speaker.
Okay. I'll be very quick.
Yeah.
I want to respond to the possibilities of the Taliban. If there's going to be a women fighter, I don't think so, because it will change. In order to do that, then you have to change the social structure of the Taliban. And in regards to what if Taliban suddenly gives us a big surprise that they were going to be moderate and have a more democratic structure or values, that is also, in my view, a bit of a long shot. It's really difficult to change your attitude or your values on something and suddenly you change within a few weeks. It's unlikely. At the moment, what I got reports from my friends or information is that it is difficult. Maybe David or one of the comments was mentioning about how will they govern. That is a huge, huge question, because one comment from my Afghan friend, how can a mullah who doesn't know how to count or do anything other than more on religious aspects suddenly became the Ministry of Finance? And that there's a resistance from the civil servants who were asked to be paid, who was offered to be paid equivalent to $50 when they're usually making over $1,000 to run a ministry. And that's very difficult. A female doctor, a woman doctor, said that I was quite surprised that there was one who treated the twin bombings, and someone said that I do not mind performing as long as you don't interfere with me being a doctor. So there's all these comments among the common Afghans. So there's going to be the huge surprise of them being moderate or modern would be a bit of a long shot. That's my take. Thank you.
Thank you, Mbak Mita. How about you, Jolene?
Thank you for the questions. I think as my quick take would be the fact that Taliban as an organization, as I sort of highlighted earlier, it's not monolithic, in that while you see the main frame of the Taliban, you also recognize the group's hand in a multiplicity of groups, including more than 20 regional and global groups operating in terms of when you're thinking about global security remit. So I think I wouldn't look at it as a monolithic group. The inclusion of the Haqqani network, the inclusion of a multiplicity of regional terrorist groups that are in operation in Afghanistan also has a part to play in us trying to tease out these contours. Will the Taliban be a more moderate force? I know that increasing reports from the field have also surfaced anecdotal evidence of attacks and acts of violence against women as well. So I like the previous esteemed speaker, I doubt they would prove to be a more moderate force.
Okay, and Hafiza?
I think my answer will be similar with Geraldine as well, because if you look at the establishment of the Taliban, it's comprised of sub-actors in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, and also in Fatah. So to say that they will be united as a large group, that's very hard to predict. And right now, I think the challenge more likely comes from the Afghan Mujahideen and also the ISIS itself. So that's all my comment, Dete.
Okay, thank you. And Bang Nasir, if you're still there. I think he's no longer there. Yeah? And WAHİDAH, WAHİDAH, Alex, are you still there? No more? Okay, so I saw there is someone raising hand, but I don't know, but I cannot see the names, but we almost 8 minutes more. I think we need to, how to say, if the question is already answered by all the participants and I don't see any more questions, so maybe we can wrap up because this is almost 16:30. Yeah, we have still 7 minutes more. So before I close, maybe I give another 1 minute for all the speakers to give a closing statement. So from WAHİDAH, please, you can start for the closing statement.
Assalamualaikum again. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for this webinar. Thank you so much for allowing us to share. My sharing is based from what I observe on the grounds, because we are implementing a PCBE project in Sulu, and so far, we don't see any movement, although there are talks, but it's not confirmed for a certain group coming from different, from Basilan to Sulu, but it's not that confirmed, but there's a little movement. But we, the security sector, are in monitoring the situations, the implications of this takeover of Taliban. But hopefully, me as a Muslim women and having a women organization, really promoting and working for the advancement of women in Mindanao, hopefully praying that the Islamic preaching for us, that we are enjoying right now, it's enough. It's more than enough for us. It's the right way that we are enjoying as women, participating, allowing us to participate, to potentially be able to contribute to the society, to peace and security as a woman, as a mother, because we would like to protect our country, our region, and of course our family. So in behalf of the women in Mindanao, in the Philippines, I am really calling out to be very vigilant, to join, to participate, and really speak up for our rights, and really work really collaboratively with the government, with our ulama. And let's work together to prevent violence in our country, and to prosper peace and security in the Philippines, hopefully. So again, thank you so much. I've learned so much. Thank you, and looking forward for another collaborative sharing in the coming days. Thank you. Nice meeting you all.
Thank you, Alex. And Hafiza, 1 minute. Hello.
Hello.
Yeah.
I think my final thought is that whether Taliban will revive as a government of Afghanistan, or whether they will fall apart, regardless any situation in Afghanistan, I think governments in Southeast Asia must take a precaution against the development of radical groups in the region. And second, because in the past we've seen that the patterns using mood by plane, but this day we cannot also underestimate the power of social media and also dark web. We have to look at especially the development using through dark web, because there could be another way or tools that this group might reform and reconnect with their regional counterparts. So that's all from me, Dete, and thank you for organizing this event. I really enjoyed this session as well.
Thank you, Hafiza. And we go to Miss Jolene.
Terima kasih, Bu Dete. I think the concluding questions or statements that I do have in mind would be that I think after all this discussion thus far, when we are thinking about the impact of the Taliban's takeover, I think for me, in terms of our region, it is a reminder that we must all be resolute in our efforts in order to reduce the threat of terrorism and extremism. So even as you look at in the weeks to come, whether the Taliban, in terms of how it decides to consolidate power on the ground, how the groups will start apportioning power, whether we think about the impact of Hambali's trial today, I think it is a reminder for the work that has been done and the work that needs to be done moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, this is very good. And Bu Diana, the last speaker,
Thank
because
you.
Al-Nasir Abbas, I think, cannot join us.
Thank you, Budeta. To conclude, I thank everyone and those who are providing us questions and stuff. I know that I cannot answer all the questions that is not relevant, but anyway, my take on this is I would like to still remain in my view that public education, especially for the youth, relevant to what Hanifa was saying about, Hafiza was saying about social media. It has a huge impact on the Indonesian students who think that Talibans are like Rambos. I hate to say that I'm being a bit cynical. Secondly is that we need to each sort of plan or strategize an advocacy to each our respective government to carefully consider, and consult with civil society groups and individuals to make sure that when they respond to the policy or to put the policy of relationship with Afghanistan, with the current under the Taliban, that women should have to be in the number two important, or one of the two important things to be in the negotiation table. I think that's my pick. Thank you so much. Mbak Det, floor is yours. Mbak Det. Mbak. Hello. Mbak. Mbak Ika. I'm anyone? Hello.
Maybe Carmen can conclude the session.
Hello, everyone. This is Anggi speaking from South Indonesia. I'm really sorry that the connection is not stable here, but it's really useful and great discussion here. You can find the video. We will post it in the YouTube, so you can search Surf Indonesia webinar series, or you can search it in PAKAR YouTube channel. So I think this is to close the discussion. Thank you very much for all, and have a great day. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.